In this section, we will take a look at data sources in Terraform. We know by now that Terraform makes use of configuration files along with the state file to provision infrastructure resources. But as we saw earlier, Terraform is just one of the infrastructure as a code tool that can be used for provisioning. Infrastructure can be provisioned using other tools such as Puppet, CloudFormation, SaltStack, Ansible, etc. Not to mention ad hoc scripts and manually provision infrastructure, or even resources that are created by Terraform from another configuration directory. For instance, let us assume that a database instance was provisioned manually in the AWS cloud. Although Terraform does not manage this resource, it can read attributes such as the database name, host address, or the DB user and use it to provision an application resource that is managed by Terraform. Let's take a simpler example. We have a local file resource called pet created with the contents "we love pets." Once this resource is provisioned, the file is created in the /root directory, and the information about this file is also stored in the Terraform state file. Now let's create a new file using a simple shell script like this. Quite evidently, this file is outside the control and management of Terraform at this point in time. The local file resource that Terraform is in charge of is pets.txt under the root directory, and it has no relationship with the local file called dogs.txt, which is also created under the /root directory. The dogs.txt has a single line that says "dogs are awesome." We would like Terraform to use this file as a data source and use its data as contents of our existing file called pets.txt. If we want to make use of the attributes of this new file that is created by the bash script, we can make use of data sources. Data sources allow Terraform to read attributes from resources which are provisioned outside its control. For example, to read the attributes from the local file called dogs.txt, we can define a data block within the configuration file like this. As you may have noticed, the data block is quite similar to the resource block. Instead of the keyword called resource, we define a data source block with the keyword called data. This is followed by the type of resource which we are trying to read. In this example, it's a local file. This can be any valid resource type for any provider supported by Terraform. Next comes the logical resource name, into which the attributes for a resource will be read. Within the block, we have arguments, just like we have in a normal resource block. The data source block consists of specific arguments for a data source, and to know which argument is expected, we can look up the provided documentation in Terraform registry. For the local file data source, we just have one argument that should be used, which is the file name to be read. The data read from a data source is then available under the data object in Terraform. So, to use this data in the resource called pet, we could simply use data.localfile.dog.content. These details are of course available in the Terraform documentation under data sources. Within the documentation and under the attributes exported, we can see that the data source for a local file exports two attributes, the content and the base64 encoded version of the content. To distinguish between a resource and data sources, let's do a quick comparison. Resources are created with the resource block, and data sources are created with the data block. Resources in Terraform are used to create, update, and destroy infrastructure, whereas a data source is used to read information from a specific resource. Regular resources are also called managed resources, as it's an extension which is managed by Terraform. Data sources are also called data resources. That's it for this lecture.